Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money-colored commentator. On today's show, financial aid for a college education, part 4 of our series on college funding with financial advisor John McDonough of the College Funding Institute. Welcome to the fourth segment, John.
Hi, Steve.
John, I need to know, because there's a lot of myths out there, there's a lot of realities out there about college planning. I need you to kind of tell me the yin and the yang, the myth and the reality. Separate the players from the pretenders.
Basically, what you think you know, what you heard at your at the water cooler, at the coffee pot, it's all wrong.
All of it.
Let's just start there,
Okay.
right? So most people think that they make too much money, so they're not going to even bother filling out the financial aid forms. Mm-hmm. What a huge mistake. Mm-hmm. When I ask people in our workshops and on our various, thousands of appointments that we've done, are you open to the idea of OPM? Do you know what OPM stands for? Other people's money. Mm-hmm. If you want any other people's money to help mitigate what you're going to pay for your child's education, mm-hmm. you need to fill out the form. I don't care whether you make $10,000 a year or $10 million a year. If you want some assistance to minimize what you pay out of pocket, you have to fill out the form. So that I would say is myth number one. The second myth that we come across is my child's not a great student. Mm-hmm. The issue there is not whether or not you can get financial aid. Mm-hmm. The issue there is, can your child even get accepted to the school that they're applying to?
Well, right? Which one comes first? I get the money for the college, or I find out if I'm going to get accepted?
Unfortunately, they both go parallel at the exact same time. A couple years ago, they changed the timing of filling out financial aid forms. Financial aid forms are now opened up and start to be submitted on October 1st of your child's senior year of high school, which is about the same time they need to be submitting their college applications for admissions as well. Mm-hmm. So you don't really know whether or not they're admitted before you get financial aid. You have to submit both forms at the same time.
Well, I see this money that's available. We talked about this in the last segment. $245 billion of total financial aids out there. And you say, I don't care if you're a multi-millionaire, you're a seven-figure income,
Absolutely.
Or you're down to $10,000 for the whole year.
Yeah.
Everybody should be looking at this.
Everyone has a concern, and their concern is, how much is paying for my child's education going to cut into my retirement lifestyle? Mm-hmm. And every single family we've dealt with, of all different ends of the spectrum, it's all relative. Is it a state school or is it Ivy League? Is it for one child? Is it for 7 children? And they want to know, are they leaving any money on the table? Is there a way that they can get assistance without having to jeopardize their own funds?
Well, I like what you just said. I mean, the last segment, you even brought up the issue, hey, some of this is deductible and some of it is zero interest. Why would I not look at that?
Because your buddy at the soccer game told you make too much money, you're not going to fill out the forms.
All right, well, this is the question I have for you. I love your 64,000 question, right? This is a great. How does my family get their share of the aid? Like, you've convinced me. I'm drinking your Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
There's my money to be had here. How do I do it?
Well, the good news is this isn't just trust me. Mm-hmm. There's a formula to this. And the formula is very straightforward. Every school has a published cost of attendance. Every family, the Department of Education or the private school consortiums give you what's called an expected family contribution. If your expected family contribution is less than the published cost of attendance, congratulations, you qualify for need-based financial aid. The question is, how much of that need is that school going to assist you in covering and paying for?
And you said earlier in an earlier segment, you said sometimes, shockingly, the private school is more benevolent than the public school. And it's cheaper to go to the private school.
Well, 100%. Let me give you an example. What if your expected family contribution, your income, your assets, your ages, the number of children, what if the cost of attendance here, or the expected family contribution was $20,000? At the state school, that costs $30,000. On paper, you have a need of $10,000. 20 from 30 is 10. But the problem is that state school is not interested in giving you any financial aid support because they have another 45,000 kids that applied to go to school there this year. They don't need to assist you. But then if we look at a private school that has a cost of $60,000, they've got a much smaller freshman class. They're not as well known. They don't have a big football team that plays on TV every Saturday, but it's still a great degree program. $20,000 from 60 leaves need of $40,000. And that school will do everything in their power to cover as much of that $40,000 as possible. So you're left at looking at a state school of 30 or a private school of 20. That's the magic to this process.
And you go through this every day as a college planner.
Every day with every family,
Wow.
with all of the different schools that the child's looking at applying to.
Well, I'm looking at the four basic sources here: federal, state, college, universities, and private sources. We'll get to private sources in a second. We already know the FAFSA, go what the government's willing to do, but it doesn't sound like much. 5,500, you're done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the state government any more benevolent?
Well, the state government will tell you that they're hurting for money more than the federal government is hurting. And so every state is different, and most states have incentive plans for residents of that state to keep the children going to school in that state, either public or private, because their statistics show where college graduates tend to graduate from, they tend to stay in that general vicinity for their working career
Now,
or
is
getting
that true?
started.
If a child leaves his domicile state, goes to school someplace else, he may stay in that state.
That's typically the way it works,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Now, college and universities, the government program sounds like they're somewhat limited, but the college and universities, so it sounds like you're making a suggestion, hey, these smaller private schools may be much more benevolent than the big schools I see on Saturday TV.
Well, a couple things to that. Number one, have you ever been to an ugly college campus?
I can't say I have.
They're typically well manicured, very well kept, beautiful buildings, and they've got gazillion-dollar endowment funds. They want you to get all the federal money and state money as possible. They've got the money. They just don't want to give up their money. You've heard of the golden rule, right? Not the first one, but the second definition is the one who has the gold makes the rules. And this is entirely the school's process, right? So what we want to do is we want to find the schools where those chancellors and those school presidents are worried that they're not going to fill their freshman level classes. When they don't fill their freshman level classes, they start to discount the cost of the freshman seat from full price down to discounted prices, and that's where we start to get as much financial aid support from the schools as possible.
So it sounds like I'm starting to investigate schools that are hurting on their freshman class.
Most parents don't have the time to do it, though.
But you do.
That's what we do.
That's all you do.
That's all I do.
Okay. Well, let's talk about. Now, we did chat about this earlier in the segment. So let's talk about getting at least get the federal loan on FAFSA.
Yeah.
And did I understand 5,500 is their top end?
Well, for the Stafford loan, that's the top end loan.
Okay.
They also have the Pell Grant. So the Pell Grant, guess what the max Pell Grant is? $5,500. And that's for families that typically make less than $60,000 of household income per year.
Could you get both if you qualify?
You absolutely could get both if you qualify. The problem is the state school costs $30,000. You got $5,500 from a loan. You got $5,500 from a Pell Grant. That's $11,000. Where's the other $19,000 coming from for a family that's a very low income earning family? But anybody, even if they make $10 million a year, if you want any access to 0% loans or very low cost loans, 3% loans, 4% loans, you have to fill out the FAFSA. It's like filling out your tax return. Can you get a refund from the government if you don't fill out your tax return?
No.
Same thing here. You can't get any money from anybody else unless you fill out the FAFSA first.
Okay, so I'm doing the FAFSA. If I can do Pell, I'm doing the Pell. These are both low interest rate
Well,
loans.
the Pell Grant is a grant. It's given to you.
It is a grant.
The Stafford is a loan, correct.
And is the grant, the Pell Grant, is that something merit-based?
No, it's need-based
Economic.
entirely.
So the days of the Educational Opportunity Grant, those are all gone.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the next part here.
Yeah.
Beyond FAFSA now.
Yeah.
Okay, I got what I got, 5,500.
Yeah.
I did the Pell Grant, maybe. I got another 5,500.
So you have this group of schools that they're private schools. They're not the elite Ivy League schools, and they're not state schools. So what they did is they went to the College Board and created a consortium, and they have their own additional form not in lieu of, but in addition to the FAFSA, and that's called the profile form. And the profile form, believe it or not, will bring your home equity into the equation. They will look and see what your non-qualified annuity values are and bring that into the equation. So they're asking a little bit more detailed information because remember the golden rule, the one who has the gold makes the rules. So these private schools are trying to see how much money you have on your balance sheet so they don't have to give you financial aid when your child
Are you
gets
saying that those
accepted.
items that you just stated are not on the FAFSA app?
They are not on the FAFSA app, but they are on the profile form.
Okay, so this matters to know which calls for what. So if I have some serious equity, this may not be the time to have serious equity in my house.
Exactly. Unless you want it to be counted against you.
No, I don't. I don't want to do that. So how many people have to go beyond the FAFSA? I would imagine
Almost every child.
Almost every child.
Because
Right.
almost every child is not exclusively looking at the state school. Most children are looking state school, private school, and so the profile is a part of almost every single child family that we're dealing with.
Okay, now institutional forms. We said before, private seem to be a little more benevolent, or their freshman year, their freshman attendance looks like it's low. They're going to start discounting.
Yep.
How do you watch this? I mean, you guys go through some painful summers, due diligence to find this all out.
Oh, yeah. And we're constantly updating it because of all the schools changing their numbers every year.
And do they do that?
Every year.
Every year.
Unreal. And they change how much money they help and give and how generous they are. And in your words, how benevolent they are every year. This institutional forum is for the Ivy League schools. And they'll ask questions. For example, last year, one of the questions was, what is the year, make, and model of mom's daily driver car and dad's daily driver car?
Wow.
If you're driving in an S-Class Mercedes-Benz and you're saying you're broke, they want to know, how does that work? So as we get to the higher price schools, we just, as Paul Harvey would say, we have to tell the rest of the story.
So we're the first one, I left FAFSA, that was bad enough. Now they want to know what my HELOC equity loan might be, my non-qualified annuities, and now they're asking me if I'm driving a $60,000 to $80,000 Mercedes.
That's exactly right.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Don't shoot the messenger, by the way.
No, I believe you. I believe you. All right, how about these additional forms, business and...
Yeah, we welcome that, right? So in our U.S. tax code, when you're a small business owner, you have multiple opportunities with the proper CPA and tax advisor to maximize your deductions and really find ways to save money on taxes paid. Same concept for college funding planning. In conjunction with your CPA or your tax advisor, we want these forms, we want these business formations so we can minimize on paper what your adjusted gross income says, legally and ethically, of course. The divorced and separation agreement, again, like Paul Harvey, the rest of the story, if you were recently divorced or separated in the last 12 months, chances are your tax return and assets are not reflecting a separation. So they're going to count double against you, and we have to help the schools understand, no, I'm a one-person household, one-income household, so they can properly give you a financial aid offer.
There's a lot to know, and I'm so glad you guys have a handle on it. Again, this is not a do-it-yourself activity. Listen, don't forget to watch our next segment on the 529 College Savings Plan, part 5 of our series on college funding. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or your financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.